Leo, welcome to your geomancy forecast for the full moon lunar eclipse in Sagittarius. So I have cleared the energies using a lovely jasper. So let's get into your reading. Just to say that if you haven't already subscribed to my website, I have done an extended forecast for Leos on my website. So I get into the astrology for Leos as well as doing the geomancy forecast, whereas on the YouTube channel I just do geomancy forecast. And also, if you're interested in learning geomancy, I have done a free conversion sheet which you can download from my website. So just go to astrologysphere.com and you'll find it on the front page. So it'll be interesting to see what comes up, because what I'm finding so far with the readings is that there is a clear symmetry between above and below, between the astrology and the geomancy, which kind of doesn't surprise me, because geomancy in many respects is simply elemental astrology. It's earthbound astrology. So but I think what it does is it gives us a chance to sort of get a snapshot on the sort of more personal or kind of mundane aspects of life that this particular eclipse may affect. So interesting that the our symbol for air, the feather, has just fallen down. Don't know whether that's going to be significant. Let's see. So first up is conjunctio, which is conjunction. So this is referring to the alchemical marriage or the union of opposites. Then we have Fortuna Major, which interestingly is Sun in Leo. So this is really your sign and your planet, which is really interesting. So it seems to be emphasizing the more kind of solar aspects of the eclipse for you. Then we have Acquisitio, which is really auspicious actually. These two geomantic symbols are very auspicious. So this is about acquiring gifts, but these are not material gifts, these are spiritual gifts. So that's really interesting. And then we have Carse, which is the Saturn in Capricorn. So this is earth energy. So we've got earth, we've got fire, and we've got earth again. So no air. Interesting. So just sort of off the bat, it seems as though there needs to be some kind of balancing of opposites, and that this could really sort of reap great rewards. It could lead to great expansion, personal expansion, as well as the acquiring of spiritual gifts and wisdom. Again, this is Sagittarius energy, so it's emphasizing that Gemini-Sagittarius axis. And in some way it's also about overcoming limitation, because Carse is about imprisonment or limitation. This is Saturn in Capricorn, so this is kind of like quite constrictive energy, you know, social conventions, kind of accepted ways of doing things, the sort of restrictions, the physical restrictions that happen as we get older. You know, we're not as kind of limber as maybe we were when we were younger, so it may involve an overcoming of some kind of limitation, or kind of thinking outside of the box, living outside of convention. But anyway, let's see. I'm going to do your conversions and we will see what comes from that. So just bear with me. Hi Leo, and welcome back to your reading. So I have done the conversions on the sheet, which you can see on the screen in front of you. If you're interested in learning geomancy, you can download this conversion sheet for free from my website. So just pop along to astrologysphere.com and you'll see it on the front page. Just a heads up, I haven't used the system here when it comes to house positions. So you know, the easiest way to sort of do house positions is to kind of work through the figures sequentially, but I'm using the Golden Dawn system, so the four mothers are being used for the cardinal houses, the daughters for the succedent houses, and the nieces for the cadent houses. Right, so let's have a look at your reading. So as you can see, I've kind of laid out the geomantic figures already onto the casting cloth, and let's see what we can sort of ascertain and whether there's any kind of overlaps with the astrology. So we always start at the first house because this tells us something about your state of mind at the time of the eclipse. So as I said, we've got this conjunctio, which is about the marriage of opposites, and it's interesting that it is Mercury we're in its position of exaltation, which is Virgo. So this is about earth energy, but it's very precise energy. So conjunctio is this kind of union or balancing of opposites, and of course at any eclipse or any full moon, this is really what we are doing. We're balancing out the opposite ends of the sun and the moon, which are usually at opposite ends of the earth. So in astrology terms, this means that the sun will be on one side and the moon will be on the other. So the sun is in Gemini and the moon is in Sagittarius. So we're balancing out those types of energies. So now if we go and have a look at what possibly could we be balancing out. So let's have a look to see where we find the sun and the moon in this particular chart. So if this is you, Leo, then this is Cancer and this is Gemini. So this would be the position of the sun at the time of the eclipse. And here we interestingly have Caput Draconis, which is not only kind of related to the nodes, but it's also related to fate. So the nodes, the nodal axis, where the nodal axis crosses is where eclipses happen. It's interesting though that this particular geomantic figure is exalted when we have solar eclipses, and that's because solar eclipses tend to start new cycles. So this, that would be energy kind of coming in, or kind of new thresholds being crossed. But I think what it's saying is that there's some kind of soul lesson or kind of karmic lesson or contract that you might be working with at this particular full moon lunar eclipse. So it could be something to do with karmic contracts with a group of people, because the 11th can be groups, or it could be with a friend, a friendship of some kind, somebody that you know through a group membership. So it could be another member of a political party, a golf club, a kind of social circle, any of those things. So it could also be about the way that you think people view you, in terms of social media, or kind of social judgment, in how do you measure up in terms of kind of social values. That's one way that this energy could work. So that's really interesting. And then of course on the opposite end we've got the 5th house here, where we have a Missio. So this would be where the moon would be located astrologically. So here we've got a Missio, which is Venus in Taurus, and this is really about loss. So it's about accepting that something is kind of over. This could be a romantic relationship, a sexual connection. It could be the loss of a child, for example. We could be talking about, say, a miscarriage, which involves a whole kind of process of grief in and of itself. It could also be about the end of a creative project. Maybe you're kind of putting something to bed, or maybe something didn't work out quite the way that you expected it to. So let's have a look at the keywords for this. So this is about transience, it's about loss, breakups, separations, what is unattainable or just out of reach. It's also about to reject, leave, decline, lose, or be stranded, or self-destructiveness, theft, and financial ruin. So the image for this is a money bag or purse held upside down so that the contents fall out. And when it's positioned in the 5th house, it's quite a strong placement for this particular geomantic figure. So if we consider that this is the position of the moon and this is the position of the sun, and we think that the sun is with Venus, and that the moon is kind of on the opposite end, then it seems to be more about a kind of emotional loss, or accepting that something has come to its natural close. So there's kind of like that sense of transience or impermanence that we have to kind of come to terms with. And then if we look at the position of Mars, Mars is in your eighth house. So here we have the Sun in Leo, Fortuna Minor. So this is about financial acquisition. It's gain in the material sort of sense. And if we consider that this is eighth house, and we are talking about some kind of joint endeavor, so whether it is a joint business project, whether it is kind of gained through inheritance, or whether it's through like a win, say from the lottery, it involves combined efforts. So it may be something to do with creativity, as I say. That's one way that this could kind of work. But it's interesting that this is a really positive geomantic figure, and that it is in your sign of Leo. So it does seem to sort of suggest that, you know, even if Mars may cause some kind of disruption here, that good will come from it. And this also might kind of be drawing your attention more to Neptune, which is also with Mars in that eighth house. So it could be through kind of almost an acceptance of some kind of loss that one stands to gain in some level, or from loss comes gain. That's kind of one way to think about this. And you know, kind of continuing this theme are the left and the right witnesses. So we've got Khase twice here, and Khase is generally speaking about kind of loss or things kind of diminishing. So if we read the keywords, we'll see that that's very much the case. So Khase is about imprisonment, isolation, delays, binding confinement, borders, locks, limits, restraints or restrictions. So the geomantic symbol is supposed to represent a prison cell, a paddock or enclosure. So this is talking about kind of limiting or kind of parameters, basically. So it could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, if we think about it. For example, if you're kind of working with, say, a gallery or somebody that's going to sell your creative work, then you might want certain parameters set up, such as a contract that lays out the terms and conditions and obligations of each party. So in that sense, Khase is not a bad thing. It provides structure and sort of limits to your association. Now this could refer to lockdown. That's one way that this may kind of work. On some level this may involve lockdown. But given that Populus is the other witness, Populus is about sort of collective energy. So this is crowds, it's kind of like, people filling a stadium. It's that collective mind, that hive mind that we get on things like social media. So it could be almost freedom from the constriction of external judgment. If you're kind of worried about what other people think about you, given that we've got this emphasis on lessons to do with groups or kind of collective energy, it's possible that a part of the lesson of this is realizing that there are limitations to just wanting to be popular, for example, wanting to be liked by everybody, wanting everybody to agree with us, or say a creative endeavor being kind of having mass appeal. I mean, maybe it's very niche, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. It just might mean that it's not necessarily commercial. So, it could mean that you need to sort of view things from the perspective of, there's something to be gained from kind of intimate relationships, one-to-one relationships, because this is, the eighth house is about shared resources with one significant other rather than collective. So maybe what it's sort of saying is it's more important, for example, that you have sort of a kind of a small but perfectly formed kind of creative partnership with somebody, or a small, limited but appreciative audience for your creative work. It could also mean a smaller family, for example, if you are thinking about having children. There's a lot of ways that small can actually be beautiful, and less can be more, and I think that is the theme that's sort of coming through quite strongly in this particular reading. If we look at the house placements, we can see that Khase is in the 10th house, which is to do with career and with sort of reputation. So that does seem to reiterate the idea that perhaps whatever it is that you feel loss about is really not for kind of public consumption, for kind of popular consumption. That the emphasis shouldn't be necessarily on kind of acquiring fame or mass appeal or getting external validation necessarily for what you're doing, or being terribly worried about your reputation. And you know, if we look at the opposite card, the kind of private sphere, we've got Fortuna Major. So there's much to be gained from being more private, not necessarily having everything out in the open in public, or like announcing things on social media, or necessarily publishing or putting creative work in the public domain, or for example, you know, if you get into a new romantic relationship, kind of announcing to all your friends that you sort of seeing somebody when perhaps it's early days, and really you want to kind of keep that that circle quite small until the trust has been established. So it's quite an interesting and complex reading. I hope that you've kind of got something out of it. I'd love to hear your comments, so you know, do leave a comment in the sort of box below. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'd love it if you could hit the like button, and if you want to see more forecasts kind of going forward, then you know, consider subscribing. But it's been my pleasure to do your forecast for the upcoming lunar eclipse. Just bear in mind that this is a 2-week sort of cycle, and then we sort of hitting the reset button when it comes to eclipse cycles. So this is kind of like the prelude to the main event. So you know, this is really a kind of a 2-week forecast. So just bear that in mind, and I'll see you in due course for later in June for the my main eclipse forecast that begins with the solar eclipse in Cancer.